Do you believe in the devil?
You want the short answer or the long one?
You run around this city like it's your damn shooting gallery.
Yeah, what do? You act like it's a playground. You beat up the bullies with your fists, you throw them in jail, everybody calls you a hero, right? Only I do the one thing that you can't. You hit them and they get back up, I hit them and they stay down.
Come on, kill me now! You don't get to destroy who I am!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Comics All the Mode, the podcast where we may or may not agree with Frank Castle. I'm Russ, as always, and as always, Landon is joining once again.
What's up, guys?
How you been?
Welcome back.
How was?
Good. Doing well.
So
Very tired.
Yeah, let's jump into this. Did you see set photos really quickly of Karen?
Yes. I would love to dive into that.
Let's talk about it. What? Because I don't know. I don't really have anything that like stood out to me about that. So,
I have concerns.
okay.
My one concern is I imagine Daredevil Born Again Season 2 will come after Avengers Secret Wars. And now that Daredevil is firmly placed within the MCU, I'm worried that the second season of this show might have some multiversal repercussions from the Avengers films, because the looks for Matt and Karen in these season 2 set leaks are such drastic departures from their characters as we know them in the Netflix show and even Born Again right now. My concern is I don't have a problem with the looks. Karen has a very red hair. It's almost Mary Jane Watson-esque. And Matt looks like he's homeless. I don't have a problem with either of those looks, especially if it's got story purposes. Like maybe Karen Page is really trying to alter her identity and keep things low key. That's all fine. But if this is like multiverse stuff, if these are variants, that stinks. And I don't like that. So just caution. But
I think I really just think that, you know, she got out of Dodge. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that she still believes that she's on a hit list. And based off of this episode, she might just
it's very possible.
She might still be on one.
It's very possible.
And also, especially with her connections to Poindexter, in that he so badly wants her dead.
It's better.
I think the only way she's coming back to New York City is with a wig, like with a disguise. Yeah,
she's like in hardcore witness protection mode after Bullseye murdered Foggy in front of her.
Yeah, and Hobo
right.
Matt looks normal to me. Like, we've seen him before that way. It's essentially how he conceals his identity when he's not in the suit.
I mean, season 3, he took on a whole different demeanor. He was wearing like a military jacket, and he was, you know, rebuilding himself from the ground floor after having New York City fall on top of him in Defenders, right? So we've seen these looks kind of before, especially for Matt. Yeah. And like I said, if there's story purpose for why they look this way, that would make sense. What I'm nervous about, though, is like these are variants, and we're getting into multiverse nonsense, and you know this is all part of Doom's new utopia that he formed after the multiple Earths collided. Forget all that stuff, dude. I hate all that.
I don't
want that.
Especially based off of this season, I do not think we are going to see a outlandish take for season 2.
Yeah,
I think
hopefully that's.
I think the biggest thing is I think season 2 is going to be a holdover from season 1. Feige wanted this to be 18 episodes. Like, that was the plan initially. When they decided to go down to 8 or 9, it sounded like they just essentially sliced it in half and threw the other 9 to season 2. So there may have there's already probably story beats and things that are carrying into season 2 that they already were thinking about.
You know what? That's a really good point. I forgot that they kind of did film a lot of this at the same time. Yeah. Like, obviously there's stuff being filmed now, but it's just been production as usual.
Yeah.
There's not been like any extensive breaks. And they got a plan. So
Exactly.
it's interesting. It's cool. And I'm also seeing I'm seeing some different angles of the Bullseye set, right? Because early last year we saw a lot of this stuff being filmed and a lot of those reshoots, namely outside of Josie's bar with Matt in the suit. You know, he's held onto the scaffolding of New York, and a lot of that stuff we saw in episode 1. There was a lot of set leak photos out there last year.
True.
I'm seeing now that episode has firmly been released, I am seeing different angles of that contains spoilers. So like Foggy Nelson will be up and walking around, but it looks like he just got shot. You know, it's like clearly people have been withholding their set photos and videos because they contain massive spoilers, right? And people like different angles of Bullseye and his costume and Matt and everything. So that's fun to see a lot of that stuff get released and just different angles of that fight and everything.
Yeah.
I
agree. All right, so let's kick into the show. Anything that going into this episode, anything that you thought about with the previous episodes, anything that came to mind after kind of letting the show percolate in the old noggin?
Really, the only thing that I feel like an idiot for saying, oh, what if that's Frank Castle at the end? Because it's clearly not. One, we know what the cop looks like who did the shooting. Like we've seen set photos. I had not seen those set photos until recently. So now that I've seen those set photos, I feel like a real idiot. But it's like it's a African American police officer in his Punisher vest. It's clearly different, but the skull logo looks very similar. But you get to see that full guy if you look hard enough on the internet. You'll see that set leak. So I feel stupid about that. But
that's going to be a very interesting. It's going to be a very interesting character brought to screen because
it will, and we didn't see him at all this episode either.
Yeah, because him being in the Punisher costume or that jacket with the Punisher logo on it, it feels like a really big departure from the character that is in the comics that we're introduced to by Zdarsky, actually, that he popped up in Zdarsky's run.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about, I think it was Detective North last week. That'd be a great character. I don't think this is him, but yeah, this episode really just reintroduced us to the Punisher character, and that's what I was here for.
Yeah,
we'll explore the corrupt cops more as the season progresses, but this was firmly just Punisher's back, and what'd you think about all that?
This episode's great. I still think last episode was probably the best episode that we've had.
It was stronger than this episode.
I kind of felt like, other than the Castle and Murdoch talk, and for the first time I actually gave a crap about the Fisk and Vanessa stuff.
Couples counseling.
Well, not even the couples counseling, them at dinner. I thought that was much more interesting dynamic. And then obviously the end of the whole thing, and seeing kind of we'll get to it, but seeing kind of Kingpin and Daredevil start to like break through the surface.
Oh my gosh, finally we're starting to really move and pick up the pace a little bit. That's why I really like this episode, because it felt like, with the exception of Hector Ayala being shot in the trial and everything, like we're starting to really get into the season now. We got more players. We got Frank Castle back. Kingpin and Daredevil are starting to slide back into their old habits, for better or worse, right? And a lot of that stuff was obviously the highlight of the episode was the Punisher stuff, but towards everything after Matt and Frank have their conversation, excellent. Fantastic. I'm not going to say it was quite on the same par as Netflix stuff. I hear a lot of people online saying, oh, this was like Netflix level dialogue quality. It still felt different, but it was very strong. It was very good. I'm not trying to cut down any of that. The rest of the episode, however, everything pre-Frank Castle, very bland. I felt very cookie cutter. I wasn't really getting much out of it.
And
It kind of felt directionless. I just wasn't vibing with it.
It's kind
And
of
then
funny.
everything turned around.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too because the intro of this episode is trying to get you to care like they got us to care in episode 2 with White Tiger. It was like, oh, here's this new person that's down on their luck, you know, that the system's corrupt, the system sucks.
Sure.
And so we're gonna have Matt do Matt's thing as he does, and it was hard because I did not care. I didn't care. And
yeah, I'm not
every single beat of that, I just didn't care.
You're talking about the dude in the jail cell who gets caught stealing cookies from a gas station.
And Matt's trying to be, you know, he's trying to be his defender self.
Yeah, it was
his lawyer thing, but like it just didn't impact me, and it felt so obvious that they were trying to get me to feel as much impact as the Hector Ayala stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if they were trying. I don't think they were going exactly for the same beat as like a White Tiger situation, but they definitely were telegraphing hard. Hey, we want you to care for this random, like petty thief. And I was like, why? He stole. It didn't. The episode didn't even make a point to say he didn't do it. He did it. And I thought in the beginning, I was like, okay, maybe they're going with. Maybe they're trying to tie this guy into Muse somehow because he kept saying, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I was like, okay, maybe Muse is pretty like, I couldn't tell you what Muse's powers are. I know he has powers, but they're vague and like confusing. So I could have seen them twisting him in a way that maybe he mind controls people. Maybe he has some sort of influence on them. Right. And I was like, okay, maybe this random petty thief, because it was so odd that they would try to put us on his side. And I was like, okay, maybe this ties into Muse, but it didn't. They didn't make any steps to say, okay, this guy's innocent or guilty. He's just a petty thief, and I didn't care about that
guilty.
at all.
No, but he is guilty. Like, it's so dumb because...
I mean, obviously, I'm sympathetic for a dude that's in like a tough spot. I get it.
Yeah,
but the answer is not crime. The answer is not stealing.
And it's so funny to listen to Matt essentially say just that.
He's like
this guy.
Right.
This guy is like, oh, I'm being unjust. Get me probation. And Matt's over here like, dude, you A, stole. You B, have a revolving door of a track record.
He's got a criminal record
to where every judge is going to look at you and be like, no, you need to pay.
He kept saying, dude, it's the best you're gonna get. You're not gonna get probation. And then it was ridiculous. I could not get on board with that. And then at the end, when they revealed Muse, I was like, oh, finally, like they're gonna steal this guy. And maybe the next episode, this random. I don't even remember the dude's name.
He gonna die.
As it stands, very weird angle to take on all that. At least,
and like it's crazy.
At least we got to see Matt do his attorney thing. Like, he's a very good lawyer. I don't know why people keep arguing with him and making fun of him for his blindness, because by this point, he's established himself as like a damn good, really good lawyer. And it's like,
that was also
10 days in jail, bro. You stole, and like
that was also one of the funniest things about the whole thing is
this dude thinks he knows better than that.
Yeah, the criminal's just like, oh man, you blind, you can't see. Oh, and like just shitting all over Matt. And it's funny to me. It's funny to me because this scene feels very like this was something that was in the old version.
Tonally it's kind of like trying to be a little more comedic, and
it doesn't feel like this got rewritten. This felt like it was very in the start, which is also really funny to me because like to me this scene, the whole that whole front half feels so forced. And like we talked about, like, is this show woke? And like this is the scene where I'm like, this would be the woke scene. Like this would be where you would do it. But the whole time Matt is like
agreeing with him. It's like, why?
Literally agreeing, like being on our side when you're looking at this, like taking the side of just absolute reason. And so I was like, damn, all right, Matt, you're a little based. Like you're based in this because he's like, dude, you would never, if any judge looked at you, you would never get probation. And all you're doing is asking me for probation. You want a unicorn? I can't take you to the fairyland. Like,
He's
that's
asking
just
for the
not,
impossible. I mean,
it's just not possible. So then Matt goes and does his thing. And he's like, bro, if I could get you 20 days, crazy. Like, I even think that's insane.
not only that,
he got it all the way down to 10 days.
Down.
He was like, bro,
miracle.
You'll be home by next weekend.
Yeah, that's like, I don't know anything about the judicial system really, but like, that's great.
Yeah,
why isn't he celebrating? He doubles down on his plight and is ungrateful for Matt for putting in, like, you know, finessing the district attorney or whoever that woman was. I like that scene a little bit, right? Because I like seeing Matt do his courtroom stuff and putting on like his lawyer pants and really being knowledgeable about the law and everything.
It's also good to see Matt in a place in his law career where he's just not always looked down on. Like everybody knows,
like
everybody knows Matt, and they respect him and that he has a reputation, which is really cool to see. Still,
I like that a lot.
R.I.P. Foggy, because I miss him, and actually that leads into the next.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. But so yeah, the Matt stuff, that whole front scene really did not work for me. I was just kind of like, I was like, okay, fine.
It's like the first 20 minutes too.
Yeah, and it feels, I'm like, where are we going with this?
Exactly. So
like, it didn't feel like it was going anywhere.
Right. I agree. I mean, the other half of this is you have Matt dealing with this petty thief and trying to get him probation and whatever. But then the other half of this is the Kingpin stuff, right? We see him really putting on his mayoral persona, and he's trying to get stuff done.
And I loved this stuff.
I thought this stuff was okay, but what I don't like is I get that they've put Kingpin in a different position. Obviously, he cannot operate like he did. You know, he's not running a criminal empire. He's trying to run the city, right? So you have all this red tape. But I just feel like this episode, and I didn't feel this way about the previous episodes, this episode made him look really ineffective and also weak.
Okay.
Even in the way that he's talking to his aide, Charlie, and the other aide, I can't remember what her name was, but the African-American woman,
I see where you're going.
Just the way that they're talking to him and he is conversing with them. And I just didn't get the air of, this guy is always in control. This guy is powerful. You don't want to mess with him. And he just kind of took it. You know, she's telling him all this stuff that he has to accomplish and all this red tape he has to cut through. And I get it. Like, he's got to be above board with everything, but this is the freaking Kingpin. This is Wilson Fisk, right? He did not feel powerful. And thankfully, at the end of the episode, we do get a very good scene, which felt like that Kingpin of old. But I just didn't vibe with the portrayal of Fisk. Like, he felt very weak for some reason.
So
did you get that?
This is what I'll say. I get where you're coming from. I absolutely get where you're coming from. The scene where he's trying to figure out, he has this grand vision for just reconstructing a part of
specifically the docks,
the New York docks,
the Red Hook docks,
and which is also the place where the gang violence happened.
Right, the double homicide at the beginning of the last episode.
Yeah, episode 3.
So there's crime afoot, and he's trying to clean it up and do all this stuff.
I agree that I think the joke of Fisk realizing that there's a lot of red tape went on a little too long. I absolutely agree with that.
See, my thing though is like he would find ways around the tape. Like he would just like in episode 2, he went straight to the construction site and was like, "Do this, do that. You're good to go. Permits secured. Don't worry about it." I was expecting more of that kind of in his conversations.
So
he just felt like he just rolled over and was like, "Okay, well, start there. Start at the beginning."
And so to that point, what I
Maybe
will
we'll
say,
see it later, but
what I'll say to that is that this felt like a situation where when they were on the street and he just got out of the car, that was just spur of the moment. I'm tired of this. I'm getting this
right.
done. That was what that was a crack in the armor, or that was a crack in this new Fisk where the old Kingpin came out and he just got shit done. What we're seeing, though, in this episode is, again, it's that push and pull where Kingpin is trying to not be Kingpin. He wants to be mayor. He has a higher vision. And so he is trying to do things by the book so that, again, he even says it in episode 3, is that he is setting up everything for a bigger payoff in the end. And I think what he wants is he's trying to follow, especially in this case, this is such a big project that he wants this to be kind of his.
He wants it to succeed. He wants it to go through. Yeah, it's going to write his name.
Like, he wants it as his cornerstone of what he goes to next. That he's like, I need to do this by the books so that there's no way anybody can take this away from me.
Yeah.
That being said, him running through this list of all the red tape to figure out what step 1 is was degrading. I absolutely agree. I think they should have had him ask 2 questions, her say, "Nope, you'd have to do this, you'd have to do this." And then his question would be, "What's step 1?"
Right. So my thing is, I understand like his position as mayor, his hands are a little bit more tied than they would be if he was just running a criminal empire, no rules.
Yeah, true.
I totally get that. I just feel like it's against Fisk's character to just roll over to the rules. I feel like, especially the way that they've portrayed Kingpin, he will change the rules for his own ends. He will still work within the book, but he will rewrite the book to get his progress made. You see what I'm saying?
I get
While
that.
still following the rules, he's going to do it his way, and he's going to get it done. And this episode just felt like a backstep from that Fisk who's like trying to get it done.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
One thing I will say to that is that he is stepping into the politics and an arena that he has no understanding of, because I think, if I remember correctly, I
don't really think that should matter though.
I think in the Netflix series,
because he's so strong-willed.
I think he took care of, like, he had politicians that he just paid off, and they did all of the bureaucracy.
Maybe, I mean, definitely, but
other stuff. So that's where I would say, like, I don't know if it felt too much like that.
I will say, when it comes to the Kingpin side of things, I love the gag with. I don't mind the fact that he has to go from site A to site B to site C so quickly. Like, he has to do some of those good mayor stuff. Like, he has to visit the kids in school. He has to go to the local church and make appearances here and there. And I love the gag of like the children singing, "We built this city." And then he's like trying to get out of there onto the next thing. And when he gets to the next thing, they're also singing the same song. That was a funny gag. That was genuinely very good.
Also, was it Latveria?
No, it was Latvia.
Latvia.
Which is a real place, right?
Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out. I was like, did they just, are they?
Dude, holy shit. If they dropped the Latvian.
Right? Holy cow.
They did drop, however, if you want to talk Easter eggs, they did drop that petty thief in prison with Matt. He was like, "I didn't do this crime. Could it have been a scroll?" And Matt's like, they took a beat. This was funny. It was kind of stupid also, but they took a beat and Matt's just like, no. It's
Yeah.
not a scroll.
I actually like that. I thought that was funny. That's that little bit of humor that allows you to attach it to the rest of the Marvel universe, which without being like, okay, guys, we really didn't need this. Like, you just ungrounded the show in essentially.
Right. Unfortunately, you're referencing like probably the worst Marvel project out there.
One of the worst Marvel.
I would love to forget Secret Wars ever happened,
gosh,
and I'm
that
sure
was
Kevin
awful.
Feige would too. But
Yeah, that
we
was
got a
awful.
scroll name drop. So,
yeah, and so, Kingpin goes to therapy next. He does all that.
I don't mind the therapy stuff because that is a space where vulnerability is expected,
For sure.
right? Because when you're
And
out,
he's obsessed with Vanessa.
and he loves Vanessa.
He
He's
loves
trying to win
Vanessa,
her back.
so I get that also.
The difference between the two scenes is one, Mayor Fisk is in charge. He's at the docks. He's trying to get it done, but they make him look weak. The other is private area, secluded room, him, his wife, and the therapist. They're trying to break down walls there. They're trying to be vulnerable there. So that's the difference between those two scenes. I didn't mind the therapy stuff. I actually think Vanessa's character is pretty interesting. Like, she's in an interesting spot. The former queen pin of crime now can't do it, right? So
hashtag queen pin.
Hashtag queen pin. It just, again, it felt like it's not really going anywhere. Where are we going with this? What's happening?
I think we've gotten a clearer picture of where it's going out after the end of this
therapy
episode.
Stuff.
Not even just with the therapy stuff, but with Kingpin himself.
Yes, true, right.
Yeah, I have no problem. I think they're doing a very good job with the couples counseling, that they're not making Kingpin.
Punisher wouldn't be caught dead there, bro.
Yeah, fair. Look weak.
He doesn't have a wife.
Like, they're doing a pretty good job of making it authentic authentic to Kingpin in a way that it doesn't make him feel like just a completely different character there. Especially with everything. And I think a lot of that has to do with Netflix did a really good job of setting up the first 3 seasons how much he loves Vanessa, and so he's willing to try to fix things.
Right. I don't mind the therapy stuff, and I think it will tie with Muse sooner or later.
I also think it was very interesting that the scene that I really like, which is the dinner table scene when they are at home, Vanessa tells Fisk that the therapist did ask me if I was in danger being with you, kind of a thing.
Let me cut you off real quick. I don't remember this scene at all.
Wait, really?
I don't know if it's because Emma walked in and I got distracted, but I don't recall them having dinner. I don't recall Vanessa telling Fisk about the therapist question. I do remember Vanessa and the therapist talking, and she's like, Wilson would never harm me, but I don't remember.
Yeah, that's that.
Sorry.
So then the dinner scene, they're sitting around the dinner table, having a drink, and she tells Fisk, "Hey, when Dr. whatever her name is,
I can't remember her name either.
Asked me to wanted to talk to me.
Heather Glenn.
She was asking if I was safe with you." And
what was Kingpin's response?
And first off, Fisk cuts her off, and he was like, "Yeah, I figured that." Like, he's like, it makes complete sense. And so then Vanessa follows that question up with, "Am I?" And Fisk says, "Hey, you know what? I know things have changed. I know I have changed." And Vanessa says, "I know, well, I have changed." And he was like, "And I know you have changed, but I want us to get back to where we were. Even if that." I think the underlying tone was, even if that looks a little bit different, he's just willing to work on getting her back, essentially.
I see. I like that. I mean, I've always liked their
the nice thing is that then that actually gives a really big payoff when you get to the very end of the
Oh,
show,
gotcha. Okay.
which
Yeah,
makes
I've
which
only
felt
seen this
so much
episode
better.
once over, so
Okay.
I didn't catch that scene. I guess.
But then we get to Matt, and we get to the good part. He goes to this just like random broken down. It looked like it was like I don't know what it was, and finds Frank Castle's hideout.
Well, even before we get there,
yeah.
he's out on the street
He goes to the
because
street.
they're trying. He gets word about the coroner. Like he's
Oh yeah.
why is he out there? Oh, they never found the bullet casing for Hector Ayala's killer, and Matt is surprised by that, and he takes it in his own hands to like go find the bullet casing, right? And this was a great scene because it showcased more of his senses and his powers, and that was kind of on display, which is always fun in a Daredevil show. And he ends up finding the bullet casing, and you don't know what he sees or senses about it being different until we get to the Punisher's hideout. But for the while, we're just like along for the ride with Matt. We don't know where he's going. We don't know what he found out about the bullet. All we know is that he went to Hector Ayala's death scene. He found the bullet casing. He senses something about it, and then he starts walking, and then he arrives at the Punisher's hideout.
Right.
I like that. I like seeing Matt take the initiative, go out on his own, kind of do some detective work. But it all led to Frank Castle, which is...
So he gets to Frank Castle, which, first off, he goes, I found something. And he puts the casing on, and he's like, I found somebody's logo on the casing.
There you go.
And my first thought was, how did you see the logo? But then I'm thinking, okay, these casings are probably, the logo was probably like laser etched in, and because he's Daredevil, he could probably feel the logo, kind of like a rudimentary form of Braille. So that's where my brain thought.
He can smell the paint or something.
But I just thought that was funny. My first thing was like, huh? Bro, you can't see. What? That criminal just said you can't see. Like, what do you?
Did he use the words? Did he use the words? I saw the logo on the bullet or something. Because that would be so funny.
He essentially says,
"Bro, I saw your logo."
He's
Frank's
like, "Look what I found on this casing."
Yeah,
and he sets it down.
No,
the Punisher logo.
So real quick, the episode in season 1 of Daredevil where Stick is introduced.
Yeah.
Right. Good episode, kind of like its own thing. They go through painfully specific efforts to show Stick teaching Matt to control his senses what he can smell. Well, I had just watched that episode previously, and he can like taste the different ingredients in the ice cream. So we're talking about very, very sensitive and specific. So he can probably smell the paint.
Well, and that's why I say if it was laser etched on the side of the casing, he probably felt it as like a rudimentary form of Braille. He was able to like, oh, that's a skull.
People underestimate Daredevil. 100%. Like it's better than, Wolverine's got that tracking scent.
Yeah.
Matt has that times 100.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the show has painted that picture for us. Like he's got it. Anyways, let's get to the Punisher stuff. Sorry, I'm getting off track.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Bro, so good.
I love it. I loved it. I loved it.
It also like the last couple episodes, like, Matt's not been in the suit. I haven't really cared that much because I've enjoyed the story.
Me too.
I was never, I'm going to be very honest, I was never that person when I watched the Netflix Daredevil that cared that it took an entire first season just to get him in the red. I didn't care. The ninja suit looks dope. And again, character development was all the way.
Yeah.
This scene so perfectly cements why the last couple episodes we have not seen Daredevil in the last couple episodes, and I'm a firm believer we will see him in episode 5. I a firm believer we'll see him in the costume in episode 5, especially after the end. At the end of this episode, But I don't think it's going to be, because next week we're getting 2. We're getting 5 and 6 dropping. And so I don't think it's going to be 5 being another episode without Daredevil. I think it is going to be, I think it's going to be 5 where we see him. That emotional beat between him and Frank is so good, because Frank,
Agree. Love it.
like one thing you recognize from season 2 of Daredevil is that Frank can kind of read Matt really very well, because he's been there. Because the way Frank looks at Matt is, Frank looks at Matt like a soldier still enlisted in the army, still trying to be a good little soldier, trying to follow the rules and everything. And where Frank is just like, no, I gave up on that.
Yeah, Frank is outside of all that stuff.
Everything was against me and broke me to the point where I am now. But you're
you don't
still
want to
being
be Punisher.
Yeah, you're still being
like,
the good little soldier and
sucks
everything.
to be me.
And that's what one of the things I loved, is that he just called Matt out. And that's ultimately, especially when you're getting this scene where he's like, you want permission. That's why you're here. You're not here to check up on me. You're not here.
Ooh, I have
You're not here to like tell me why that, you know, I have copycats, because we both know that I have copycats.
Right. So are you saying Matt went to Frank for permission to get back into being Daredevil? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yes.
He wants permission.
He wants permission, because ultimately the reason, and this is something that Frank kind of pulls out of Matt, the reason Matt stopped being Daredevil is because Foggy died.
He failed.
Is because he failed to save the one person who always told him that he didn't have to be Daredevil.
He was a good.
He never had to be Daredevil.
Matt says something about Foggy. He's like, he was the sweetest soul, of the kindest.
He was the
person,
best soul, and the soul that like neither of us could ever
lose somebody like that. That tanks everything. So yeah. Because I love that take. I mean, it's definitely part of it.
Oh, yeah.
I read into that scene a little differently.
Okay.
So when Frank, they throw around the word permission, right? But before that is when Frank brings up, it might be before or after, this whole conversation is permeated by Frank knows what's been going on in Daredevil's life. He recognizes Daredevil's absence. He knows that Bullseye, we get a name drop for,
which also was a reshoot. Which was a reshoot.
Holy shit.
It was an ADR.
Blew my mind though to hear Bullseye.
Yeah,
not Ben, not Dex, not Poindexter.
Yes,
Bullseye.
That's true.
Wow, loved it. I got so hyped. Emma was like, "What?" And I'm like, "They said Bullseye." Oh, fuck. Like I got hyped. But I think there's a whole different side of this scene. I think Daredevil or Matt. I think what Punisher is getting at is Matt came to Punisher, or wants Punisher in some way, shape, or form to kill Bullseye and make restitution for Foggy's death. Oh, and I think that's what Frank was getting at. You put him in jail. He got life. He got a lifetime sentencing, right? Matt is like, he got life. Like, they're heated at this point, this conversation.
Yeah, because he punches.
And then,
he punches.
Dude, he flat out, I think Matt flat out thought that he killed Bullseye, but then Bullseye survived. He got life in prison.
Right.
That's justice, right?
Right.
Except for Matt, he's not getting Foggy back, right? We saw this play out in the trial of Bullseye in the beginning.
Right.
So the definition of justice for the Punisher and Matt is vastly different. And I think Matt is jealous that Frank has this farther. He takes it farther than Matt. He takes it farther than the justice system, because it's like an equilibrium. Foggy's dead. Bullseye needs to die. And I think that's what Frank is getting at. At some level, Matt approached Punisher because he wants the Punisher to kill Bullseye. And when we're talking about permission, he wants to give Frank the go-ahead to kill Bullseye and have true justice for Foggy. That's kind of what I felt like throughout the scene.
So I agree with you on a lot of it. I think the difference in both our takes is that I think it's a lot more personal. I think I really do. I think it's Matt is essentially coming to Punisher being like, I need permission to put the suit back on so I can beat the crap.
I do think that is the primary,
because ultimately I think at the end of the day that's absolutely right. Is, you know, he got life. Oh yeah, well, how about old Foggy? Did he get life?
Yeah,
like that's
how it plays out.
That's Frank going, and how's your system working, bud?
Mm-hmm.
Especially for someone who is your best friend. How's your system working? And that's when he goes, and then, you know, Matt goes at it again, and he's like, he's in prison. He goes again. He's like, he got life. And he was like, it's the system works. And Frank just is like, bullshit. Your system does not work.
Mm-hmm. Not in the sense that
not in the sense like it's again in Frank's brain it's a carousel door, one of those rotating doors. It's
nice
just
reference to Punisher, the carousel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
But it's
a revolving door.
It's a revolving door. Thank you.
In and out.
You know, it's in prison 1 minute, out prison the next. In prison 1 minute, out of prison the next. No matter what, if you know, you're good. No matter if the prisoner got life, they're gonna get out somehow, and so then it's again just another revolving door. But I think it's so the most powerful part of this scene is when Castle just goes, so say his name.
Oh yes, love that. Matt cannot even say Foggy's name,
and that's
the trauma for him. It's so good and rich.
And that's that Catholic guilt. That's that guilt. That's that just burden where a lot of the reason, you know, to make like a metaphor is like Matt buried Daredevil.
Right.
But he buried Daredevil. He buried Daredevil under the body of Foggy Nelson.
Ooh, yeah.
And so Frank being like, say his name.
Mm-hmm.
Say Foggy's name. Is Frank going, here's the shovel. Dig.
Not only that.
Dig it up, because you're never going to be able to get back to the core tenets of why you do the hero thing without admitting to yourself that this was that time that you failed. And it's okay to fail because you can make it up the next time.
And this shows
that was just like a big thing for me.
Admittedly, I struggled to put together my point about the permission aspect between Frank and Matt.
Yeah.
But my point was, there's a lot of different layers to this scene. There's a lot of different layers.
So many layers.
Characters. Yeah. Both of these guys have had such a similar but different path. And now with that added level of loss to Matt's character with Foggy, there's a real difference in how Matt and Frank have approached their trauma, right? Because Punisher has accepted his family's death. On the one hand, Frank has not moved on from his family's death at all. No. On the other hand,
no, not at all.
He's embraced it so far that he is solid in his code. He knows exactly what he's going after. He knows exactly what he's trying to do. Whereas Matt is floundering. We see that because he has suppressed Daredevil so much. He's distraught. He still can't even say Foggy's name, right? So he's clearly not over this in a healthy way. And I'm not saying that Punisher is healthy in his approach to his trauma. I'm just saying they're in very different places right now. And Frank, having years to master this, is approaching Matt, and Matt is just, he does not know how to deal with this.
Frank,
you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah. Frank has not dealt with his pain in a healthy manner. But that being
But he
said,
has dealt with it.
But that being said, exactly that.
Yeah.
Frank Castle is still light years ahead of Matt because he has actually dealt with his trauma.
He's accepted it, and he's still saying, like, I still hear my son's voice or my wife's voice. Like, they're driving me.
Exactly.
They're driving him, whereas Matt is being held back by Foggy.
And ultimately
that's so interesting.
Ultimately, I love this scene too because it gives context to, you know, the first 3 seasons of Daredevil on Netflix is that Foggy was always like, you don't have to do this. You shouldn't be doing this. You don't have
that
to do
voice
this.
of reason.
And yes, at the end of the day, he came around to understanding why Daredevil did it, and why Matt did it, but he
was never quite comfortable because there's always that danger.
Perfect example. Episode 1.
Guy doing this.
Episode 1. What Matt is like? Why didn't you tell me? And
exactly.
He was like, I didn't want to give you an excuse.
An excuse. We had permission.
And again, yes. Yeah. And so that's then where Foggy dies while Matt is being Daredevil. Daredevil gets buried under. Foggy's no longer there to give permission.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
so now Daredevil, Matt no longer has someone to give him permission. So who does he go to? He goes to Frank Castle.
Well, the whole thing too about the permission,
and he starts asking. He starts asking for permission from Frank, and Frank's like, "No, you got to say his name. Like, you have to deal with this. You have to deal with the fact that you
got to deal with it. He's got to deal with it." And I think it's important to remember too, though, when it comes to the permission aspect, is like Matt didn't know what was at the end of this tunnel. He didn't know. Well, he did. He did. He saw the bullet casing. He absolutely knew what was happening.
He also knew where Matt was. Let's be really honest here. He knew where Matt was. This was not a situation where he was looking for Matt. Like, he was looking for Frank. Sorry, Frank. Like,
he wasn't. He
like,
didn't.
Matt knew where Castle was.
Find Frank, but when he discovered the bullet had Frank's logo on it, he didn't say, "Oh, this." He knows that it leads to Punisher.
Yeah, well, but that's also the thing is like he knows where Punisher is. This is not the first time they've met in 3 years since the end of season 2. Like Matt has been keeping up on him.
Yeah, it's not like Frank was not in the news in season 2 for having a shootout with Jigsaw. Like, the Punisher's been around.
Yeah,
and we can see in his hideout he's got newspaper clippings and. Like, he's still active. So that's interesting. I wonder what he's been up to.
But it's really interesting that, like, that was the one thing that caught me very interested, is that he just, once he found the casing, he figured out that it had a connection to Punisher. He went, "Oh, I know where you are." And went and knocked on his front door. Like that's the thing.
I see what you're saying now.
That's the thing. Is like
he always kept tabs on Frank.
He had enough tabs on Frank to know where he was. And
see, I need to go back and rewatch this episode because I thought he was just following the clues of the bullet. I didn't think.
No, because the bullet really didn't show any clues. Like,
I thought he was just smelling his way through the city. I don't know,
but here's the thing. Now here's
Frank. Yeah,
here's the thing, though. Think of it this way. Also, what is that? Do we really believe that bullet was Frank? Well, we know that bullet wasn't Frank's. So he couldn't have followed the bullet to Frank because that bullet wasn't Frank's. And that's why when he shows up, that's when he shows up, Frank, he goes, "Look what I found." Sets it down, and Frank goes, "These damn fanboys."
Yeah, they're both on the same page with the cops taking on the Punisher moniker. Yeah.
I think, and that's why I'm actually, after
and Matt knows that it was the dirty cops too.
Yes. That
recontextualized a lot of the scene for me.
I'm much more excited to see this dirty cop part play out and the Punisher play out more after seeing this scene, because I think they actually are writing the scene or writing this storyline well enough that it's not going to feel like, oh, everybody hate the cops, because they even kind of did that at earlier when you're dealing with this guy who did steal. Like, he's trying to he's victimhood. He's just victim mentality, blaming everybody else. And it's like, Matt's like, dude, you got arrested for stealing. Like,
Oh, you're talking about the petty thief?
yeah. So like going all the way back, I'm starting to see like, okay, cool. Like
I
we're
like-
actually gonna see this storyline is gonna play out. It's playing out
I
well so
love.
far.
I do enjoy how they're treating it, and especially you get that scene before Matt gets to the Punisher, which holy cow, I need to go back and watch this because it's been retextualized for me just in our conversation. But there's a really key scene, and one of the better parts of the first 20 minutes, which we've talked about as being kind of weaker. Matt and Officer Powell's rivalry is brought up again when he's, Matt is doing his lawyer thing and he's in court, and there's a lot of hustle and bustle around, the law officers or whatever. And he hears Officer Powell, right, with his super sense.
Yeah.
He confronts each other. Like they have that bitter rivalry going on again. They're talking about fisticuffs and fighting and this and that. But then there's this element of Matt is kind of secretly interrogating him and listening to his heartbeat to see if Powell knows more than he's letting on, if he's privy to like which cops, or if Powell himself did the shooting of White Tiger, right? So there's that little,
true.
And they clearly hate each other, right? This dirty cop hates Matt. Matt is clearly not a big fan of Powell's either, right? We've seen them fight. So I love that they brought that up a little bit. I love that the dirty cops kind of have a face with Officer Powell.
I don't like Officer Powell. I
hate him. I can't stand the character, but
like
I like what he represents as that side of the story, and I like their little rivalry that they have. I think it's fun.
I agree with that. I hate the rivalry part. I think the rivalry part is the dumbest thing that this show has written in. That
little scene in the bathroom, I thought that was
I don't like the fact that this cop knows that Matt is either faking to be blind or,
I don't think he thinks Matt's Daredevil at all.
No,
I don't
know
even
that.
think he knows what the sense is.
I don't think so either. But
an incompetent
I'm
cop.
sorry. There's this guy. There's this lawyer that's blind that all of a sudden just kicked my ass. I don't know. I'm not holding on to that information. I'm telling the world that information.
I see what you're saying. Well, he's too prideful to admit that he got his ass handed to him by a blind man.
Yeah, but like,
I see what you're saying. I totally get it.
I don't know. It rubs me the wrong way. And it's fine. Again, it's fine. I have no problem with it. It's like a little odd. It's still very odd to me. But yeah, that Frank Castle, that they killed it. I'm very excited to see him.
It was great.
More in the show. It's actually interesting because it came out today that he passed on the first iteration of this show. They wanted him to come back and it sounds like this scene was gonna be a little bit of the same thing, but this was gonna be the only time Frank showed up in this entire season. And I guess Bernthal was just like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Like you don't have this scene and then not pay it off and just have that be the one-off that I'm here.
Bernthal came back with the Social Network. He said, I'm not coming back for 10%. I'm coming for all of it. Give me
and that's the thing. I'm very excited for what he's going to do with the Punisher because it's...
Me too. We were talking about those...
we got new information on that, and that sounds really interesting.
We were talking about those set leaks earlier, and those were also some really prime set photos that came out last year. We saw Frank back in his Punisher garb, right alongside Matt in his red Daredevil outfit, like that. Dude,
it is good. It's just good. It's just good
crazy.
To see Frank. It's just good to see Frank in the Punisher logo. Like
those photos are amazing. I can't wait for that episode.
That was always my biggest critique with season 1 and season 2 of the Punisher is that he had the Punisher logo on at the beginning of the show and then got rid of it
very end,
and then at the end, and I'm like,
season 2 was a little bit better, because it was traumatic for
sure,
Billy Russo's character.
Still weird,
but no, I agree. I think we've got a Frank Castle who's fully embraced his role as the Punisher. He goes out, he kills and punishes criminals. and he does not care what anybody thinks of him about that. I think he does have thoughts, like we saw him, be a little bit pissed off at hearing that the cops are, doing something with his name. I've actually looked into there was I was watching a video or something, and where the first time that it was brought up, like the Punisher confronting cops that have taken his logo and idolize him. And Frank straight up is like, you guys have it wrong. You don't understand a thing about me. If you want an idol, his name is Captain America, and he'd be happy to have you. I had no idea that scene even existed until I saw a video that was like discussing it a little bit. I don't know much about the Punisher. I've not read any of his books, really. He's always been in a supporting capacity with the things that I have read. So I'm not going to sit here and gatekeep Punisher like I know the ins and outs of the character. But I did think that scene in the comic that I've been looking into, like, so good, right? You want somebody to idolize. Here's Captain America. And like, cops should be practicing within the confines of the law. They're not out for vigilante justice. They are keepers of the peace. They're out to protect people and rehabilitate criminals. They're not out to punish and kill criminals. They're out to arrest and keep the peace of the Commonwealth, right? That is not Punisher's role. Punisher is out for retribution, and you do not want to sympathize him. You do not want to be Punisher. So if they have a scene where like Frank confronts some of these cops and adopts that sort of mentality, like, quit playing dress up, go home, do your job, and I am a one of one Punisher. There's nobody like me. There will never be anybody like him. He's the only one that can operate in that capacity, right? Because that's not the role of police officers. So This is, like we've been saying in previous pods, this is a very touchy subject, but I think so far they've got a handle on it. And it sounds like in Bernthal, I trust, man. I totally think he's top of the character.
I think if anyone, that's the thing, is like there are some actors that really understand their character and will fight for that character, and I think Bernthal is definitely one of them. The comic that you're talking about,
is it Garth Ennis, or is it like
no, it's
somebody, I don't know, Punisher writers, but
Matthew Rosenberg. It's the series actually has him become War Machine at one point and essentially kills the Taliban.
Oh, that's that.
And then he comes back. Then he comes back to New York, and he goes on a rampage of killing
Kitchen
Hydra.
Irish. Or something. Oh, Hydra, yeah.
And then there's a couple cops that like start brandishing his logo, and that's when he says that, which is also funny because on X I've gotten into a couple like debates with people because they take that as like, oh yeah, the Punisher hated the cops. It's like, no, you dum-dums. Read it. But anyways, that scene was amazing.
Awesome.
Dude, Bernthal looks amazing as Punisher, as always.
It really felt like a different show.
Yeah. I mean,
when we got that scene, I felt like I was watching something totally different because the past 20 minutes were just weaker. Yeah. And then you get here, this juggernaut of a scene. It's like, whoa. Let's be this all the time.
No, absolutely.
Let's have this strong dialogue and all this stuff. I don't really have anything else for the episode.
So let's get to the end. Then we get to the end, and we get Kingpin going to have a meal, and find out that the person that Vanessa had an affair with is sitting in a cell.
He's got Adam locked up in his wine cellar.
He has Adam locked up in his wine cellar, which I thought was hilarious. I think that's, again, we're seeing the cracks. And now we're also seeing that a lot of the Kingpin stuff has been a facade, which now, in a lot of ways, it makes sense the way Vincent D'Onofrio's acting and playing of Kingpin has felt a little off. And it's because he is trying to create that illusion of there is a facade here. Like, he is not just... and you go back to the diner scene, too. You're like, oh, Fisk is so genuine. But in reality, it's all an act right now. and he knows Matt well enough to know how to regulate his heart. And Kingpin is a calculated person. So of course he would be able to essentially fake out the polygraph that is Matt Murdock.
Yeah, I think because of this end scene, you do get a better sense that Fisk is putting on an act.
Yeah.
Like trying to be the good mayor, trying to go through all this red tape properly. I could eat my words this week about the Fisk stuff, because if he is truly trying to be on this, pretend like he's on the side of the angels while kidnapping people in his basement, like I get that. I do think the diner scene with Matt was one of the only, if the whole mask thing facade, I do think the diner scene is one of the only scenes where we got the genuine Wilson Fisk, and I love that. I think that's interesting. Yeah. I think it's really cool that as he's walking to the end of the scene, he walks right past Rabbit in the Snowstorm, and what's on it but the blood splatter from season 3, man. Holy cow, that got me so hyped, because that's like a nice little through line. That's canon. That is a piece of established canon, breathing, living right there. Like that shit happened, and that's confirmation of it, right? And also the Rabbit in a Snowstorm like means so much to him and explores so much of his character, how he sees this piece of art, right? That's a brief glimpse inside the tortured mind of Wilson Fisk, right? And his father and his childhood. I love that he has that down there. And like this, that's like a great indicator that this right here, this is the real Fisk. Everything you've been seeing up until this point, it could be an act. It could be genuine. It could be
this end is very much the way this episode ends is very much the, hey, we're at the turning point. Like this is the turning point.
Definitely.
And then, because of then we cut to Matt, and he goes up and he's looking at the helmets. He's looking at all his suits, which again, I'm gonna say this. I love the red. I really do. But if this first season had brought him in the like black and red, like traditional like Daredevil suit, but just
like the
black,
Shadowlands
like
suit,
the Shadowlands suit, I think that would have been so freaking badass, and just have the red accents would have been perfect, because it was that.
You might see it.
Because here's the thing, to me, it would have been that cool tie of he's still feeling out his demons, but it's like, hey, you know what? I'm using this. This is the suit I'm using. And especially, I've always thought of it too this way. Even if it was, we had got that suit only in episode 1, and essentially it's the idea that Bullseye had tarnished the red so that he had to be using a different suit until he's reborn, and that's when you pull out the red. That's all I'm saying. Like, if you had pulled out the red in episode 5, would have been sick.
Yeah.
And he would have run with the black.
Is that Daredevil's got some great looks. Like, he doesn't really have a bad look in his comic history. You can say what you want about the yellow and red suit.
No, it's
the She-Hulk suit.
It's not terrible. I don't mind it. The way they did it was fine. It was great. Yeah.
But the Shadowlands suit, a lot of the Chip Zdarsky stuff looks excellent.
You and I both know. We both know what suit we want.
We both know where we want Daredevil to go when it comes to his looks.
We want King Daredevil.
We want that full beard look. We want that hand ninja look. We want the wraps, man. Bring all that shit back.
To that point, even the original suit that Zdarsky brings, which is he has the hand wraps, but they're red.
But it's the traditional
and
Daredevil,
it's the traditional, but you still have little pieces that are of his
little more
boxing.
Cargo pants. Yeah,
it's more of that. I would have loved to see that, where even like in this current suit, this current suit had more like his gauntlets looked more like wraps. That would be so cool.
That's a very natural progression of the character's look too, because he went back to the black suit, the proto suit, whatever you want to call it, in season 3, right? Yeah. And he had the wraps, he had all that cool stuff on him. Gosh, there's a million places we could go with that, but he's got a lot of cool looks. We got a sneak peek at like the Daredevil,
All of the helmets, yeah.
HQ with the helmets and all that cool stuff.
And then he brings out the Billy Club.
Then he starts practicing on the roof, man. He's doing his evanescence. Bring me to life.
So dope.
Like,
that was
wake me up, wake me up inside. He's doing all his cool Daredevil shit.
Yeah, that was pretty dope.
I can't wait to see him back.
And then at the end, we got a little tease to Muse, which
a little bit of Muse. I
really don't care. I'm kind of like
Whoa.
I'm gonna be really honest here. I don't really care about Muse. If they use him correctly and they use him in a really interesting way that I enjoy, fine. But it's one of those characters that like I like the character. I don't have any like expectations going in about this character. I'm kind of just like, all right, cool. Like, let's see. Because I'm more interested in the drama part of everything else going on. That like Muse is just a catalyst to that, hopefully.
I feel you. I'm the opposite. I'm very excited to see Muse. One, I level with you because I don't know that much about Muse. I know that when he was introduced, he served a very specific role, and then they killed him, and then that was it. True. They brought him back here and there briefly, but he served a very specific role, and I think he will serve a very specific role in this story as well. However, I'm very excited to see him. One, because it's one of the only original new things that Born Again is doing, right? Because we have Punisher, we have Bullseye, we have Matt, Foggy, Karen. We have all of this holdover stuff, which it's excellent, and I love that we're getting it all back. But that's all holdovers from the old Netflix stuff. We did not get any Muse or any of that in the Netflix stuff. That is a wholly, specific to Born Again, and I'm excited to see what they do with like a big villain specific to this show and introduced in this show. So I'm very excited. I think he's got the right amount of like evil, but like he's also got a gimmick, right? I love the costume with the mask. He's all about art and the vision of his work, his horrible, dark, demonic work. He sees it as art, right? I love that. And a villain, very comic booky. And I think that's going to tie a lot of these storylines in, right? We saw Heather Glenn and her therapy. Like, I think Muse will tie into that because we saw that really shifty kid approach her. We have no.
His eyes definitely look similar. Like I don't know why I gravitated to that, but I was like, oh, his eyes look very similar to the guy. Now you and I both kind of called that's probably going to be Muse.
Oh, a mile away. I'm like 90% sure that kid is Muse.
That would make sense why I went, oh, he has the same eye. He has similar eyes. That was in episode 2, wasn't it? Like we haven't had
no play on that in the past 2 episodes. So
true.
Yeah. Exciting things to come, man. Like you said, we're in a turning point. I think this series is really going to start picking up now.
Final thing, if you could rank them, where like episode wise, where the first 4, what's your ranking on the first 4 episodes?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. Yeah,
with the exception of the. Okay, so I would split this episode in half. I would do 1, 2, back half of episode 4, 3, first half of episode 4.
Yeah, fair enough.
Can I do that? Is that fair?
Fair enough. I would go 3, 1, 2, 4.
3 above 1. Wow.
3, 1, 2, 4. Yeah, I really liked 3. I really.
You know what? I've done a little bit of a 180 on 3. I was a bit too critical last week. The more I hear about it and discuss it with people, I do think the trial
also, to be fair, that surprises the hell out of me because I would have thought, especially with the opening of 1, I thought 1 would be my top, but it's definitely still episode 3. I really loved that episode. It still
bothers me that Matt would totally out another vigilante, but other than that, I do think 3 was a pretty strong episode. Especially seeing the first half of this episode 4, I was like, oh man, what are we doing here? And then Punisher. So
yeah. All right. Well, next week we got 2 episodes, so next week might get long.
Yeah, we'll be on one next week.
We might, and maybe we break it. we'll see how we do. We might break it into 2. We could always break it into 2.
Do that.
But yeah, well, we hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you on the flip later.
See you guys.
Play outro.